So let's talk about the transition to blockchain. You're known by many as the blockchain senator. You shifted from the auto industry to blockchain. What drew you to that space, and how do you see blockchain transforming traditional industries?
Yeah. So, look, I'd like to tell you that it was a genius move on my part. I give full credit to my son, who's 26 now. At the time, he was 14, so it's 12 years ago. He came home from school. I got home from work. He goes, "Dad, I have one word for you." I said, "Yeah, Kevin, what's that?" He goes, "Bitcoin." I go, "What the hell is Bitcoin?" He goes, "Don't ask any more questions." He goes, "Take all your money, every cent you have, and invest it in Bitcoin." Bitcoin was like at $100 back then. And I go, well, that seems like a bad idea. And he goes, no, I'm telling you, Dad, do it. And so as a joke, it's a true story. I picked up the phone and called a guy named Shane Bigelow. Like, where'd Ryan go? Right here. There you go. So you could tell Shane I told this story. So I called Shane Bigelow at the time was the managing director for Bernstein, where it was my money manager for the Midwest. I called Shane on speaker. I go, hey, Shane, I got Kevin here. He says I need to withdraw all of my money out of your account, put it into Bitcoin. And Shane goes, well, please don't do that. And I said, no, I was just kidding. He goes, well, actually, blockchain is really interesting. I said, what do you mean? 3 hours later, he decides to leave his job. I decided to sell my dealerships, and we started a tech company that uses blockchain to make car titles digital, to sell software to state governments to allow no paper in the car titling process. And I just sold my shares of that company to Stephen Cohen. As I said earlier, it would probably be one of the first tech unicorns in Cleveland. And that's how we got into that space. Now, I will tell you, my son did take all of his money and put it in Bitcoin. He's got a couple multi-million-dollar homes, and he's building a Mercedes dealership with Roger Penske Jr. But he's a typical Bitcoin, and I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know any Bitcoin. I don't think he's ever sold it, but he's done very well.
Along those lines, great. Technology and innovation. So talk a little bit about the future of blockchain. Where do you see some growth industries and beyond just crypto? Just curious.
Anything that requires ownership validation, anything that is a heavily paper process. I'll give you an example. In Ohio, not sure how it works in California. In Ohio, it takes about 6 months to die. You die, but you're not officially dead for like 6 months, right? So imagine a death certificate that's on blockchain that it automatically validates the fact you're dead throughout multiple systems. Part of what Elon is discovering in the Doge efforts is that there's a lot of really old people, meaning 120, 150, 170 years old, that are collecting Social Security because they're not technically dead yet. And so the ability to have death certificates on blockchain is very positive. Driver's licenses on blockchain. So use this example. So now imagine my daughter, when she was maybe 21 years old, she goes to a bar and you got some bouncer, this 300-pound guy that wants to see her driver's license. That driver's license has a lot of really personal information. What prevents that bouncer from calling a buddy of his and going, hey, I got this cute girl here. She lives at 123 Main Street. I'll let you know when she's on her way home. Like, why would you give that bouncer your address? Right? That's a very personal. Why not have it so it's a QR code that you scan? Now the bar has a total, complete audit of who's entered, that they've validated ID. And all you're telling the bouncers, the only thing he needs to know, I'm over 21. You don't need to know anything else about me. So those types of technologies are, I think, where there's a lot of investment opportunities.
Great. And tonight we're actually hosting an event. If you guys want to come, it's at a car museum. Shane, what would you say his car value is in that garage of his?
100 million.
$100 million worth of cars. You're welcome to come. It's my event tonight. I might as well do all my events on the same day, So his company verifies luxury products on the blockchain and made built $1 billion+ off this Dan King. So we're very excited. That ties right into what you're saying. As far as AI, because AI has been this continued growth industry for the past decade. How do you think AI and automation will reshape traditional industries, and what should business leaders look to do in adapting to it?
Yeah, I think similar to blockchain, with AI, you think about, generally speaking, what can you use the technology for? Identifying patterns. So any business that involves around, hey, I see repetition of patterns, but you can do that dramatically more effective with some ERP models. The other piece of it is being able to, I'll give you for instance, payments is a big deal, right? So I want to know how to make payments more efficient. Why can't I just tell Siri, order me a pizza? And Siri knows based on past recognitions what pizza I like, what store I could do it, takes care of the whole process behind the scenes. Pays Papa John's, gives Papa John's my address. I don't have to do anything other than say, order me a pizza. And it knows, generally speaking, how to make all that happen seamlessly and accomplishes the payments as well. So there's a lot of opportunities there. Healthcare, huge opportunities, identifying patterns. Look, this is why it's so important to have President Trump and what he's doing and having a regulatory regime that encourages innovation, right? Have a very broad set of light touch rules that allow innovation to flourish. The biggest challenge we're going to have on AI is that we're in a global race against China. And while I don't believe that DeepSeek actually spent $6 million, I think that's a inflated, a totally fake number. But DeepSeek does not care about patent infringement. They don't care about copyrights. They don't care about intellectual property. So if our models are restrained by that, we're going to lose that race. So we got to be really, really careful.
And along those lines, I think one of the big issues as well is energy. Amazon and Microsoft both reported that they're at the limits of what they can produce as far as energy, which is why we're so pro-nuclear. There's only so many clean energy options. So we do have a healthcare question along those. There's a lot of chatter on Medicaid cuts. What are the Republicans going to do about that? Just curious. You're right.
Yeah, the media is divorced from reality when reporting these stories. Monumentally frustrating. Actually, I'll just say one thing that really pisses me off. Because if you're a Medicaid recipient and you read that in the newspaper, it's extremely stressful. Like that person is already under stress and they read Republicans are going to slash Medicaid by 50%. That's a life to death situation for these people. What we're looking at is very simple. It's called good old fashioned common sense. 3 buckets. Number 1, eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. By the way, that shouldn't be controversial. Let's all agree that that's a good thing. And by the way, I say that there's probably a 70% popularity at 30%. Oh, there's no such thing, right? There's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. Number 2, create some sort of work requirement that the states manage. So California will define its work requirement maybe differently than Ohio, maybe different than Alaska, but there has to be some requirement for work to receive any welfare program, and Medicaid, of course, being one of those. And then the third one is, how do you deliver better services at a lower cost? How do you do things more efficiently? How do you retract some of these regulations that are causing hospitals and providers to actually have to spend money senselessly? So those are the 3 buckets, and that's it. That's what we're going to do on Medicaid. By the way, same is true for Social Security and Medicare.
Couple last questions, and then we'll turn it to the audience. How does leading a business differ from running a political campaign?
No, actually, it's very similar. It's very similar because, look, it's very similar to a car dealership, honestly. What's your brand? What's your competitive advantage? How do you market? How do you persuade? How do you go out? How do you go out and decide what is the most effective media? All of us in this room consume media differently. We found streaming, ads on streaming to be very, very, very effective. One of the kind of ironies, I don't want you to think we did this on purpose, we're not that smart, but we found that the one audience that doesn't skip streaming videos, you know what that is? Like, think about yourself. You're watching an ad on YouTube TV. What's the first thing you do? They skip. You're like right there. It's like a race. The minute it comes up, skip it. You're like, yes, go. I pulled out, watch this video. But you know who doesn't do that? Kids. So it's kind of a funny thing that we spent so much money on streaming that I'm probably the most famous person in Ohio between 6 and 12-year-olds. Because they'll watch the 30-second ad, and they'll watch the next 30-second ad. They'll watch the next 30-second ad, and now they've seen 3 ads in a row. And it was interesting. I told this story last night. I went to a charter school in Columbus that had just opened, and the principal meets me at the door and said, these are 1st and 2nd graders. Like, they're not into politics. We have no idea about civics. We haven't popped them yet. So kind of be patient with them. Sure. So we walk into the classroom. These kids all look up. All their hands go straight up in the air. Principal's like, that's odd. I wonder why all these questions. What would you like to ask? Okay, he goes, you're Bernie Moreno. And the principal's like, wait, how did, no, you, oh. I go, I don't know. I don't even live in Columbus. I live in Cleveland and I had one dealership in Cincinnati. And then we said, what would you like to ask? You're running for the United States Senate. It's a 6-year-old. Like, that's crazy. What would you like to ask? You're running against Sharon Brown. There you go. Then I look at the principal, and the principal look at me. She's totally floored. I mean, I can't believe what she's saying. And then there's the cutest little kid, big eyes, raises his hand like that. I go, what would you like to say? And he goes, you're gonna win. And I go, that's really nice, right? Like you need affirmation for 6-year-olds every once in a while, right? And of course, rookie mistake. I say, well, why do you say that? And the kid looks at me and goes, Sharon Brown is just too liberal for Ohio. And the point is, think about this and that. Think about your friends that are liberals. I know all of you have friends that are liberals. Think about that parent of that 6-year-old. That the 6-year-old gets in the car and the way to school, drop off, right? I think one of you had a kid drop off this morning. And you that 6-year-old says, why does Sharon Brown let men in girls' bathrooms? Now, you're a liberal parent. How do you answer that question? Because that 6-year-old thinks that's crazy. But the 6-year-olds look at the parent going, Mom, you don't agree with that, do you? He's like, ew, I don't want a boy in my locker room, right? And so it was a very effective way to reach people. I'm not suggesting that you target kids. What I'm saying is that to answer your question, you got to understand how to reach people and how to create a conversation. That's the goal.
So let's switch gears back to your comment about, private sector people getting involved with government. I feel like this is the White House that's setting that precedence where you're seeing more people like David Sachs yourself going from the professional world into the public world. What sort of advice do you have for entrepreneurs that want to play a role in shaping public policy? How can they get involved?
You have to get deeply engaged. You can't be a bit player. You can't be somebody who's far off in the sidelines. Get deeply engaged. Understand where are the places that you could add value. Look, President Trump is pretty amazing, right? A 79-year-old real estate developer for New York has inspired a generation of young people to serve their country. I mean, in a way that uses their skills. That's pretty remarkable that he's been able to accomplish that. You remember 2 years ago? 2 years ago, the reality with President Trump was very different than this day. Let's be honest about that. When I launched my campaign, I endorsed President Trump in January. But that was at a time when Ron DeSantis was the presumptive nominee. I was tortured for having endorsed Trump. And now today, of course, all that's very different. But one of the comments that was made was Trump will never find anybody. There's nobody who will serve in the cabinet. No way. Nobody would ever prostitute themselves, ever serve in a second Trump administration. The exact opposite. I mean, the level of talent that President Trump has attracted is pretty incredible. Yeah. People who I look at it, honestly, I went through the confirmation process for all of his cabinet, and I would see a lot of these guys like, why? It's amazing that you're willing to do it. Elon Musk, he's the wealthiest guy on earth. Why is he sleeping in the executive office building, working 24/7, watching people literally try to burn down his business? And yet the guy wakes up every single day to serve the country. It's pretty inspiring. And I think we have to take that opening. I think this moment is going to be recognized where we went from having a permanent political class, which we were never intended to have, right, to having a much more citizen-led people who serve their country for a fixed period of time, don't stay there forever. You go to serve, you come home, which is what our founders 248 years ago intended.
When you look back 20 years from today, what do you hope will be the biggest impact that you make?
That a business person going into politics is by far the norm, and the exception, the rare exception, is the person who's only been in elected office. And that we totally pivot that in a totally different way. The conversations are what you would expect. When you never run a business, you've never had to suffer from the dips and valleys. You've never woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning in a cold sweat because payroll is later that morning and you can't sleep because you're doing some math in your head going, do I have enough cash to meet payroll? Your wife looks at you and says, are you okay? You go, oh, that's great. Everything's totally fine. Nothing at all is wrong, right? And then you see government policies that make it harder and harder and harder. You're trying to develop a culture with your staff, and you have policies that says you must make certain that every employee by the 5th hour has taken exactly a 15-minute break. And if they take a 12-minute break. We're going to fine you $10,000. You're saying, I can't manage all this. This isn't the way I can run a business. But if you're a bureaucrat, they look at it and go, look, you're not lucky. You made money because of luck, and it had nothing to do with your hard work or your effort. And you saw Schumer on The View the other day say that exact thing. All these business people say, why are you taking my money? Yeah. And then on top of that, there's a respect to the taxpayer dollar, which right now we don't have a lot of that in DC. They look and say, well, that's only, a couple $100 million. That's no big deal. Like, it's $200 million. Like, there's people who are writing checks to the federal government. I expect you to use my taxpayer dollars with respect. Use it in a meaningful way. I think all of us look at it and go, does it make sense to take the Roosevelt Hotel, which was one of the largest hotels in Manhattan, 1,068 rooms. The government negotiated a contract for $6,000 per room per month, $72,000 a year to house illegal migrants. $6,000 per person per month. The hotel is owned by the government of Pakistan. So we're taking $75 million and handing it to the government of Pakistan to house people who broke into our country legally. And you have American citizens that are suffering, that can't make their rent, can't afford a car, can't afford groceries. And you look at it and go, that's grotesque. And I think if you're a business person, you understand the obligation of what it means to have people rely on your good decision-making for their families. And that's a responsibility that all entrepreneurs carry on their shoulders. Elected leaders don't have that same feeling. So that's really the most important thing we got to get to.
And it's so refreshing because in October, my backyard, when Speaker Johnson was there, I didn't know which way things were going to go. I don't think anyone did. And to gain the White House, the Senate, and the Congress, it's thank God, right? Because now we can flip the script back to where it should be going. My last question ties into a 17-year-old that's here with us. Ryan, do you mind standing up and showing your product to everyone? That's cool. Ryan, at age 12, developed Sensory AI, which is a wildfire detection unit that now the Orange County Fire Authority, City of Irvine, we got the mayor of Newport Beach right next to him. They're investing into this product. It's really happening, right? So to see that kind of innovation is very exciting here in our backyard. What sort of advice do you give to young entrepreneurs that want to make an impact? What did you?
Take all the naysayers and negativity and put it out of your mind. Look, every great entrepreneur, you have to surround yourself by people who are not shackled with what has been and what's possible or not possible. I think President Trump, one of the lines that he used in the his inauguration speech, which I think really was poorly reported, is that in America, what makes this country unique is that we make the impossible possible. That's true. There's not a lot of 17-year-olds in any country on earth that would have the freedom or even the idea that it's possible for a 17-year-old to come up with a technology like that and have it be possible that they can succeed. Look at great entrepreneurs all over this country. This is unique here. That idea of innovation and creativity is something that's so unique to this country. It's built this place, and we have to protect that at all costs.
Great. So I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions for Senator Moreno. When I call on you, please stand up, say your name, and then say your question as loud as possible, sir.
Yes, my name's Steve Stanlaw. I'm a proud supporter of your campaign. Short of the ever elusive comprehensive immigration legislation, is there a way to get more skilled workers to immigrate to this country, particularly tradespeople? Because if we expand the pool of manufacturing jobs in this country, we're going to need the skilled workers to fill those jobs. I don't think we have them today, and I don't think H-1B visas are available for welders. I could be wrong. They probably should be, but what can we do to get skilled workers, to get trade people to immigrate to our country?
Sure. Well, look, self-serving, I'm a decently good fan of legal immigration. I think it worked out well for me. One of the things that's happened over the last 60 days, it's actually pretty remarkable. I think when you had Speaker Johnson at your house in October, and if somebody said, hey, the border will be completely secure within 60 days of Trump taking office, people would say that's actually impossible. Never happened. We're seeing border crossing numbers that are historically low. That's really good news. Because now the American public has the faith that says, hey, we're not continuing to encourage illegal migration. That's really good news. Now we can have an intelligent conversation. The first element's got to start with, look, we're paying 8.1 million people that are able-bodied adults, 18 to 54-year-old able-bodied adults, no disability, no children at home to take care of, no elderly parents to take care of. They can work. 8.1 million people, an average of $43,600 to stay home. That's insane. So we have to get that workforce participation number up, and we have to help them get to a runway where they skill up, because we have to take care of American citizens. Number one. Number two, we're never going to get comprehensive immigration reform because they throw everything into it. It becomes so big it fails. We have to take rifle shots. Let's take a look at the executive orders that President Trump put in place. Let's put that in legislation. You can't claim asylum unless you come through a legal port of entry, and you have to wait in the prior country till you claim asylum. We put that bill out there. Every Democrat objected to it. You have to get to a point where DACA on the other side. Look, if you're Ryan's age, he came here, he was one. We're not going to deport him to a foreign country. Does he know what that is? So let's take care of that. That's easy. And then let's take a look at critical industries where we can bring people in that benefit American citizens. Don't lower wages. Learn the language as a criteria. Assimilation is another criteria, and you're adding value to our economy. I think if we have that general framework, we can actually have a robust immigration system that's logical. It's not chain migration. It's not lottery. It's who can add benefit the most to this country. You don't have to add to the total number of visas, by the way. We give 1 million visas a year legally. Let's just have the mix be more beneficial to the country.
Next question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a thank you, Senator Moreno and the chairman of the AEC. It's a great organization at Bern. I'm actually very interested in doing, sure, a few comments and also a question. First of all, like you introduced yourself, I first time learned. I came to the States 20 years old and then became a citizen at about 36. And for the family here, raised 3 kids. My wife lived here. It's just really to echo what you just said. Like for our friends and neighbors who've been here like 5th, 6th, or even longer generations, sometimes really that kind of a pride spark lost, and that's something really kind of unfortunate. And luckily, on the November 5th last year, kind of everything changed. And thank you to many brave people, including yourself. Thank you. And I remember your one of your campaign mode is like it's back to common sense, right? Like English, learning English and the English as the first language should be so important. Sounds ridiculous, right? That is shouldn't be even emphasized. But why is that? That's my question for you. And how are you going to implement that to help? Because one, I want to raise an awareness of one typical example. During the campaign, I was came from mainland China. Like Chinese community, Chinese American community, the voters are less participated. That's one. And the second, they are greatly biased, foolish, by brainwashed by the radical, extreme radical, propaganda, and they think a lot of fake news, I would say, or fake propaganda. But unfortunately, the reason why behind is because of language barrier. If they are able to step out that and just read it by itself and think about the common sense, it shouldn't be that bad. But that's something really try our best to chip in to help to improve. And by the way, I hold a great hope. California have rate and partner rated, but Ohio has a JD Vance and you, right? So it's all great things were happening. We're so happy and also put kids' future for their for America's future. Lastly, I want to share a personal feeling. Min and I we the first time been to Mar-a-Lago, in past December. It's just unforgettable, and it's a great power and feeling there. There's an opportunity everyone should make it happen for yourself. And thank you all. Also, last thing, thanks for Pacific Club. Ever since we joined as a member, we learned a lot, participate a lot of events like this, and it's all inspiring and very helpful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Look, at the end of the day, what unites a country? I think about that. Like, what makes a country? It's a physical piece of land, right? But we're more than just real estate. We have a shared culture, a shared history, and we have a shared language, just like we have a shared currency. And you need to make certain that you have a uniting forces. That's how you keep a country together. And it's not unusual. Every country on earth has its own language, except for America. So I introduced a bill to make English our official language. We should make it a criteria for people to come here to master and learn our language, because otherwise you're completely outside of the cultural north. And look, I like to say it all the time. Like, we want to play. You need to play for the American League, right? When you come to America, like, this has got to be your country. Otherwise, why did you up? Like, what's the entire point? If your idea is to keep the culture and language where you came from, but you just want to be in a different geography, but you want all the benefits in the country, doesn't work that way. So assimilation, melting pot, really important.
All right, Coach, please, regular comp.
Senator, thank you. Tom Gibson from Pacific Club. Tell us about your most influential mentor, and from your point of view, because I think we can all agree, we're extremely impressed by your energy, your enthusiasm, all that you've accomplished, what you would tell us to do as far as mentoring others around us and all. Again, praise the Lord.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, obviously, look, I like all of you. I guarantee you, I know for sure for Beth, your most influential person is your mom and your dad. There's just no question about that. For me, that's no different than all of you. So I learned enormous amounts from my dad. I learned enormous amounts from my mom. 7 kids. My dad was one of 13. My dad's family is very wealthy in Colombia. And imagine my mom makes a decision, a Latin woman in 1971, that she's going to take her kids and move to America and leave everything behind in Colombia because she doesn't want her kids to grow up entitled. And so she moved us to the US. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment. And my mom made us all work. And it was, hey, I'm going to give you a lovely household, a great education, but you need to go to work at the earliest opportunity. She actually lied to Publix and told them I was 14 when I was 12. So I'd bag groceries. But it was the thing that you never get anything for nothing. Like, if you want something, you have to work for it. So that mentality of watching my dad have to leave a life of privilege to make $5.25 an hour as a surgical assistant doing rounds in the middle of the night with medical students when he had been the dean of the medical school and secretary of health was incredible to watch. That to say, hey, look, anything's possible in this country. So that left a lasting impact in my life. And I think it's important to help young people like Ryan and just reach out, have a community that says, hey, how can we help you? How can I plug you in to different opportunities? I think those of us who've been given great gifts, give that back. And others, there's no better feeling than that. So my wife and I do that for a lot of budding entrepreneurs. It's really important to create a community culture around that.
We got about 3 more minutes at the Senator. He has to go to Los Angeles. So why don't we move gentleman in the back, please?
Yes, thank you, Senator Sean Mackey. An informed citizenry is required for a successful democracy. What do you perceive for how we improve education?
So today, I think President Trump is signing an executive order to do away with the Department of Education. So that's a great accomplishment. As you know, Jimmy Carter created it in '79, completely unconstitutional. You can imagine the founding fathers sitting for 12 years writing the Federalist Papers and the Constitution. And they made it, like, you read the Federalist Papers, which I read because my mom told me passing the citizenship test was impossible. So I literally read all 88 Federalist Papers, the Constitution, Declaration, the history of all the founders. By the way, not an easy to them, a very easy guest. Okay, I didn't need to do any of that. But they were very concerned about a federal government that was overbearing. They wanted most of the decision-making to happen at the state level. In fact, the 10th Amendment, you can imagine they wrote that, said, do you think we were clear enough? Let's just write it one more time. Anything that's not explicitly written belongs to the states. Education is best done at the local level. In Newport, let Newport parents decide what Newport kids should be taught. And if you hear that kids in Bel Air are being taught something else, who cares? It's not your issue. Let them teach that there's 97 genders. You don't care. You're going to teach like there's a man and there's a woman. Next question. Right? It's easy. But what we have is federal dictates of how education should work. 4,400 bureaucrats running education nationally just has objectively not worked. And then we need school choice, because everybody in this room has school choice, by the way, for your kids. Every single one of you has school choice. But poor people don't have school choice. They're locked into failing schools, and you keep this cycle of poverty going. States are best equipped to fix that and to break that chain. Our universities have been completely hijacked by the extreme left, where the university, instead of being a place of true free expression and free speech where all ideas are considered, that's right. Do you feel comfortable in your school talking about President Trump and being a conservative? And the answer is probably at your school here, I would guess yes, above average. You ask that kid in LA, he'd be, hell no. Like, I am not talking about that at all. First of all, I won't get a girlfriend. And secondly, I'll get totally abused and bullied in school. It's not worth it. So we have to change the dynamic there and focus kids on learning science, math, communication, critical thinking. Let all the social conversations be taught where they should, which is at home. That's where it belongs, right?
Great answer. Two last questions, Joe.
Thank you so much, Joe Rope. How do you work with public affairs professionals, particularly at the federal level, daily? And then we help them communicate and disseminate their messages and analyze kind of, public sentiment. One of the biggest challenges that a lot of these public affairs leaders face is public mistrust or public trust around the messages that they put out. And I'm curious to get your perspective, kind of twofold. One, how do public affairs folks, particularly at the federal level, combat that? Meaning what we say is actually true, right? And two, do you think blockchain and sort of this technology could potentially empower some of that with just all the authentication and the ledgers and all that kind of fun stuff? But just kind of curious your take.
Yeah, there's no question that eventually blockchain does get that because you have authentication for sure down the road. I don't know if that's a this year type of thing, but that will come. Look, at the end of the day, one of the things that's changed, I'm Gen X. From my generation to Ryan's generation, the way media is consumed is very, very different. The attention span has gone from I can watch a 45-minute speech and be fine to I can't even watch a 45-second video before you lose attention. So you have to make messaging super clear, super easy, super comprehensible, short. And I think if you could do that in an effective way, especially conservatives and Republicans, put it in terms that they could instantly understand and relate to. Don't make it wonky. Don't make it deep in the woods. You lose somebody after a very short period of time.
Last question. Quick. Joshua.
Regulation. Has there been any consideration of putting like professionalizing regulation, like how you might do in business, where you tie regulations to KPIs and maybe a half-life 10 years, and if it's not approved, it goes away?
Yeah, no, you're going to see more regulatory reform in the next 4 years than you've ever seen or even imagined. We understand that regulation is strangling the American economy. So we're looking at things like Mike Lee's REINS Act, which is regulations of the executive and needed scrutiny. So what that means is if a rulemaking body in the executive branch, because we shouldn't bank on always having a Republican president. So if they pass a rule and it has an effect on the economy, that rule has to be validated by Congress within 60 days. If it's not proactively validated, the rule goes away. So it's an instant check on these types of overburdens of regulations. Like, for example, you can't have diesel trucks after 2030. Okay, well, that's insane. We don't have the capability to switch over, but that's a rulemaking. That wasn't a law. Nobody voted for the bureaucrat that put that rule in place. So looking at things like that, having new regulations have to have old regulations come off. A lot of, like in my world, believe it or not, the card titling world, there was a law that said that a federal adopter statement needed to be signed with a wet ink signature with 3 copies. Well, you can't create a digital title if you need 3 copies of a physical piece of paper. So we had to pass a law that said, no, digital signature is acceptable, and a digital signature using a blockchain type proof of work is considered a digital signature to give the company certainty. So the regulations that have to be looked at all the time. I laugh sometimes. You got to talk to my colleagues and we'll talk about regulations and they'll say, well, that was because in 1954, this law, in 1954, like, holy crap, we haven't updated things since 1954. And that's the way all things work around here. And that's why, again, I'll end when I started. Maybe a successful business person that accepted the premise that says, well, we've always done it that way. I know it's stupid, but that's just the way it is. That's a successful business person that say, don't ever say that to me again. We're going to do things that make sense. And that mentality is what needs to permeate Washington, D.C.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Senator Bernie Moreno